Next, we're going to have Val come on up, who is the earliest and largest investor in Prosper loans.
That's right.
Individual investor. So he's going to give us a retrospective on the industry as he's seen it from that vantage point. Thanks, Val.
Thank you, Angela. So thanks to everyone for coming out here. Thank you, Orchard, for setting up this great event. I'm in front of you today because tomorrow is exactly 10 years since I funded my first peer-to-peer loan. Since then, this industry has grown tremendously to originate over tens of billions of dollars a year on an annual basis. Before I go into how I got here and to become the largest lender on the Prosper platform, I want to go back a little bit about how I got started. So let me grab my clicker. I'm going to need that. So I'm originally from Soviet Union. I grew up out there, and at the age of 10, I came here, landed at JFK in 1992, and the first thing I noticed is that the doors just automatically opened up. At that moment, I kind of realized that the Western world is very much automated, and I've seen that again when I found this thing called the Kleenex tissue papers. You pull one out, and there's like another one waiting for you automatically. As a 10-year-old Soviet geek, that was pretty fascinating, believe it or not. And next thing I know, I would be in my 6th grade class, and I would just get up and pull the tissue out just for fun of it, pretending that I had a runny nose every day. Moving forward a little bit, when I was in high school, I started my first, this is 98, 99, I started my first company, and it was fairly successful for a high school kid at 17, 18 years old. And, but I have eventually seen, and very quickly seen, the internet bubble of 2000, and all of that just kind of fell apart overnight. That said, however, I was able to manage to pivot that very quickly into a search marketing, a paid search advertising company that used digital and that automated everything. I was a one-man show running 800 different brands, 800 different campaigns through paid search, and this is before Google even existed. So with that, I was seeing a lot of cash flow coming in, a lot of profits, and frankly speaking, I didn't know what to do with the money because I was still scared to invest into traditional vehicles because the equity markets of the internet bubble just scared the crap out of me, to be frank. And so when in 2006, I came across the news that this thing just was released in February 2006 called Prosper. And what Prosper allowed you to do is automate the business of lending. So the first thing I thought was, great. This is an automated way for me to be a bank. I could help people. Sounds pretty fun. I could put some money to work. So, and at the time, you would expect to see kind of the double-digit returns. Somewhere in the teens or something like that. So I opened an account very quickly on March 8th and quickly started making my first bids. And I call them bids because at the time when Prosper 1.0 was launched, there were two very big distinctions between how you know the system and Prosper 2.0 today. The first thing is everything was a bid. You actually bid on a listing, and that bid could end up anywhere in terms of the interest rates. You bid on stories, so and the more demand there is for that story, the lower the interest rate goes. So it's hard to actually, there's a lot of moving parts. And the reason I call them stories as well is because borrowers literally told their stories. So you have to kind of read through these again, stories. And while some of them were easy to make a decision on, so like the one that you see behind me is listing number 995. So I bid on one of the first 1,000 loans in US history. And this one was pretty easy because somebody was purchasing a new server to start a new company. So that was a check from me. Some of the other ones were a little tougher, where you read sometimes depressing stories about people having medical issues, having family troubles, and as an investor, sometimes it's hard to disconnect from that emotionally, because and also trying to make a business decision. Now, at times there were also there was some comic relief on some of them as well. For example, when a bartender asks for capital to go on a 6-month world tour, and then you're thinking to yourself, well, how the heck is he going to pay my loan back if he's traveling for half of the year? So there was some interesting stuff about the initial wild, wild west days of Prosper. But one thing that I do remember, and I try to remember to this day, is all these stories remind me that there is a human element. Not was, but there is still a human element behind each and every borrower out there. So now I know most people in this room, and myself included, for us it's mostly every loan is a line item on a spreadsheet. It's a bid that Orchard makes at like gazillion times a second. But behind each one of those loans there's actually a story behind. And I try to remember that, and I think this industry should remember that as well. So after putting a portfolio of 600 stories together, I decided to kind of sit it out and stay on a sideline for a while. And of course, a few months later, the Great Recession starts. I mean, we know the whole story. The stock market just is down 55%. Unemployment is cratering. We have this major financial crisis on our hands. And to top it all off, you start seeing all these SEC reviews for Prosper, and at the end of 2008, they get shut down. Or actually shut down. They blocked them from accepting any new loans. So you're seeing all of that, all together. I figured, well, my account, I had a few $100,000 invested at the point, and believe me, there was a lot of work to put a few $100,000 in 2006 and 2007. I figured I'm going to take a huge hit on that account. And I'm not a credit expert. I don't know anything about credit markets. So I was pretty sure that I'm going to be hit pretty hard. So what's interesting though, a few years later, I decided, wait, I got this Prosper account, let me log in, let me pull whatever money out I have in there, just close that thing down. I log in, and to my surprise, what I found was that I actually did not lose any money. I'm like, wait, how's that possible? And eventually, actually, the account netted out an actual gain. So again, not being a credit expert, I started doing some research, and the closest asset class that I figured I found was unsecured credit card debt. Right? It's also unsecured, it's consumer, so I felt that it was pretty close to what I was investing in, and it's also fairly prime, maybe near prime at times. And when you look at the Federal Reserve data that you see behind me, you will see that in the last 20, 30 years that the net default rates have never surpassed the actual gross interest rates. And many of you probably know this, but I didn't know that at the time. And to me, that was a big aha moment. I was like, all right, when I'm ready to start investing more capital, this is where I'm putting it. So at that point, I was very confident, and in 2013, I was running my several other companies at the time, and I sold in 2013. I sold my company number 2 and number 4 actually in the same year, and I figured, well, I got all this liquidity now. Let's put it to work, and let's dump it into this thing. And around the same time, Ron Suber and the Vermoots, they took over Prosper early 2013, I believe. So I'll call up Prosper. I say, hey guys, I want to put like all this capital to work, and they almost laughed at me. They're like, oh, it's like, dude, I don't know if you want to put all that capital on our platform. We're not really ready for institutional-sized investors directly on the platform. And here's some options. And they mentioned they start working with this firm or this guy named Don Davis. And I think he's right there. I connected with Don, and we quickly hit it off. I really like the guy. And I've done a ton of due diligence on him. And I know he appreciates those days. And I was very comfortable with that structure. Because it also allowed me to have some liquidity if I ever need it. The cash drag situation is much different. There's no cash drag pretty much when you're in the fund as opposed to investing in it directly on a platform. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me, and I was actually glad Prosper connected me to him. From there on, I became his. So his fund was only less than a year old, I think, at the time, and managing under $10 million. And I quickly wired the money after doing all my due diligence, and became his biggest investor. Actually, I believe I was his first multi-million-dollar investor as well. And then over time, as I felt more comfortable about the asset class and about Don, I kept putting more and more and more capital to work over the coming years, to a point where Don would call me up and say, hey, Val, I'm thinking of doing this and that. What do you think? And at some point, it made sense for me to actually become a managing partner and partner up in the firm as well. So with that said, I think 2013, and I think I don't know how much credit Ron gets for this, but 2013 kind of kicked off the institutional capital period. Obviously, Ron Suber went on on a roadshow and telling every institution out there about this whole great new asset class. And I'll thank Ron for bringing all that yield compression to the market. So you've seen, obviously, the yields go down. But it's actually a great thing, in my opinion, and because it creates a lot more stability. And you have a lot of smart people, like the people sitting in this room, who are, and also press on top of that, who is looking at this asset class, and not just this crazy maverick who was investing all the way at the beginning of stages. So what's great for institutional investors today is the number of options that are available to them. A couple of great options, for example, are if you want an actively managed fund like Prime Meridian, great, right? You could just put your money to work, and you put a lot of capital to work pretty quickly. On the other hand, if you want to put more resources in-house, there's this great company called the Orchard Platform that allows you to take care of all of that. It allows you to execute your orders very quickly, and they've done an unbelievable job at doing it, and we actually use them with our fund as well. And when I look at where we are today, where we're going tomorrow, so if you look at this is the Google Trends chart, looking at peer-to-peer lending and marketplace lending, whatever you want to call it. And by the way, peer-to-peer lending is the dominant search still, so I don't know which one I should be calling, but I'm going to stick to peer-to-peer lending today. I think when you look at it and you see that 2013 uptick, where the institutional capital started coming in, we start seeing a lot more press coverage. And so I think that was the first big wave that gave the industry momentum. When I look at and I think about what is going to be the next big wave, we actually just heard about it today when Mark and Matt were talking about the secondary market. I think liquidity and the secondary market is going to, and assuming, Mark, you're going to pull that off, no pressure. If we really have truly liquid market, I think that's going to be the next big frontier that's going to give us a second wave of momentum. And you're going to probably see that chart go up much more because there are going to be a lot more players in the industry looking at this asset class. So to me, that's very, very exciting. And before I jump off, I do want to make some comments about the current market situation. Frankly speaking, seeing all the news, and yesterday, Bloomberg just had another story yesterday. I think some of the news has some truth to it. Some of it is overblown. But at the end of the day, as an investor, I'm actually excited to see some of this bad news out there. Like, make up stories all you want. Great for me because all this institutional capital is slowing down, and it's allowing me to finally see an end to this yield compression that we've been seeing for last couple of years. And in fact, as an investor and as a firm, we actually believe that we might start seeing a turnaround where the yields start moving up. In fact, I am already committed to invest even more capital over the next month, this month and next month, and I'll be having my the highest position I've ever had in this asset class. So I'm very excited about that, and I think we have a very, very interesting future ahead of us. So with that, I want to thank everybody again, and I want to yes, David. David's going to be running the next panel. Obviously, got to meet David.
Great to have
so
you here.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.